Hello and welcome to News Libre Sports. I'm Moses Echodo, and of course here on News Libre we bring you nothing but the very best of all the sporting action, all the sporting stories that have been happening all over the world. And of course we'll start with this focus that is on the English Premier League. And we talked about how so far 4 games have been played in the English Premier League, and currently that is Manchester City and Liverpool are still at the top, continuing from where they stopped last season. The two big giants, continuing to compete for the English Premier League title. Now, of course, there is so much that has happened. Arsenal started the season quite well. Manchester United with a 4-0 thrashing of Chelsea. However, they have not really been the same team that we saw on the first day from that game that we saw at Old Trafford when they beat Frank Lampard's Chelsea 4-0. And now we are in a scenario where in the part where Frank Lampard has actually gotten to the 5 points that Manchester United are also having at this point of the season. Manchester United won a 4-0 win at Old Trafford against Chelsea, have gone on to pick up 2 extra points that now puts them just 5 points. And then of course you look at Chelsea, first game they lost, they have gone on to draw and then picked up a massive win. But for me, the players that have really been impressive at Chelsea have been Tammy Abraham. Of course, remember that he started off the season horribly with all the racial slurs being thrown at him. And then of course you have Mason Mount as well, having started incredibly well at Old Trafford. He's continued to show that he's the player that Frank Lampard can rely on in that midfield, where Ross Barkley has continued to show that he's not yet the mature player that we all thought he would be at this particular point in time. He's not shown that he is able to deliver. And you look at Manchester United, of course, we talked about how he is going to look at building the team around Anthony Martial and Rashford up front. They were very brilliant in the first game. Martial continued on in the second game again, but Rashford just seems to have disappeared in the clouds, and I think it's probably a time that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer looks at how best he can organize his team and his players and find a system that can be able to accommodate both players, because they have no alternatives. Lukaku was sold to Inter Milan. Alexis Sanchez was loaned out to Inter Milan as well. They've already let go of a defender, that is Chris Smalling. They've let go of Matteo Damian. So there's so much that is happening at Old Trafford, and you think that probably there's a vision that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer wants to put across. However, we are yet to see it, because in all this we have not yet seen a system. The system that he's been trying to utilize is a system of contain the midfield and then take a counter-attack towards your opponent, and that has not yet worked out for him, because one, against Chelsea, Frank Lampard was still trying to figure out his team, trying to identify how he can play his midfield. But against teams like Wolves, against teams like Southampton that love to close out the spaces that you can operate in, that love to congest that midfield and that defense, they have struggled to find rhythm. And I think that is where the biggest issue for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is, and he has to be able to identify what he needs to do to change those areas. Paul Pogba, who is supposed to be the iconic player for this United side, for me, he's done all that he can. However, because of how there is lack of depth in that midfield, players that can be able to do the dirty work and carry the ball towards him, he has been forced to drag himself backwards to pick that ball and drive it forward, and that is always going to be a challenge, because when you have Pogba dropping deep to pick up the ball, he's always not going to be able to give you the kind of creativity that you want to see from him. So you're always going to look at how you can depend on him making those crosses that will help to create chances for the likes of Rashford and Anthony Martial. We talked about Anthony Martial's injuries, and he's one of those players that is always injured, and you're thinking that probably Manchester United should have been thinking about how to get someone to provide support. And it's unfortunate they weren't able to get a player like Paulo Dybala, because you'd have thought that Dybala would have been able to step into those gaps when the likes of Anthony Martial are out injured. For Arsenal, I think Unai Emery is just not knowing how to utilize this team. You have the likes of Dani Ceballos, you have the likes of Mesut Ozil, you have the likes of Guendouzi, you have Willock in that team. But against Tottenham Hotspur in the North London derby, he played 3 players whose mentality is all defensive. You have Guendouzi, you have Xhaka, you have Lucas Torreira. There's no one to be able to think about creativity in that team, and that is always going to be a big challenge, because you want a team that is always going to create chances. And you would have thought that probably without even needing to play Mesut Ozil, you would have played Dani Ceballos just ahead of Granit Xhaka, for me, who is ever a calamity in that team, making so many reckless mistakes that he should not even be making. And I think that is why Wenger told him at one point that he should just abandon making tackles, because of these tackles, Arsenal got gave away a penalty to Tottenham Hotspur, who went on to have a 2 lead. And when Ceballos came into the game, you could see that there was a complete change of the atmosphere and operation of the team. Of course, you'd have thought that Pochettino could have done so much, bringing that is Lucas Moura to be able to run down that wing and try to bring more energy into Son Heung-min. And then of course that is where the big difference is. And you look at the defensive setup as well. When Papastathopoulos, Socrates, and David Luiz, make different movements, they forget that one has made a movement, and so they forget that they need to cover up. And those are some of the things that Unai Emery needs to do. You have 3 great attackers, that is Lacazette, Aubameyang, and Pepe, but you don't know who you're playing behind them, because you need to have someone like Ceballos, Ozil, who is able to identify a run in a second and pass that ball out there. Liverpool, of course, there was a bit of wrangles between Sadio Mane and Mo Salah. However, those are some of the things. Those are things that have been happening for a long time. Sadio Mane is a mean player. Mo Salah is mean. However, Mo Salah is more mean than Mane. But in all this, I hate the fact that Firmino is in the mix of this, because he's one of the most selfless players who is able looking out for the interests of the team. And I think that is where the big issues are. And you get the feeling that there is so much that can be done with this Liverpool side. There's so much that they can achieve. The biggest query that I still have is, with all that is happening, I still believe that Liverpool may not be able to win this title away from Manchester City, because Man City, they have so much depth that Liverpool cannot pride in, and that is where the big issues for them are going to come in. However, the first 4 games of the season have been nothing but impressive, and we wait to see what will happen on the 14th when the league does resume. Me, Moses Echodo from Newsleber. Remember that you always get every big story on newsleber.com. Every aspect that is tech, business, motor. Of course, you have national news that run over the place. All that information will always be there at newsleber.com, and always be able to check out our different social media platforms, because that is where we are able to give you all the stories, all the information that you want. Newsleber Auto, Newsleber Sports, Newsleber itself, we're bringing you nothing but the very best of stories. For me, Moses Echodo, and the entire Newsleber team, was saying goodbye.